Let's kick off this newscast with the latest coming in from Europe as the coronavirus pandemic has swept across Europe and wreaked havoc. And now it seems that the infection rate is showing some signs of slowing down. Several countries, including Italy, Spain and France, are mulling a step-by-step repeal of their respective nationwide lockdowns. Spain has recorded its lowest daily death toll in almost a month. The new numbers have given hope to the country's overwhelmed health services. Not just the death toll, the infection rate also seems to be falling. In the last 24 hours, infections rose by just 2.4%. Hospitalization rates are also following a similar trajectory, but the government is not ready to lift the lockdown yet. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez plans to extend the lockdown until May 9th, but children will be permitted outside from April 27th as part of a gradual easing of restrictions. France has reported similar numbers. There were only 395 new deaths in the last 24 hours, and the country's total death toll is now 300 shy of topping 20,000. The number of people in ICUs also fell for the 11th consecutive day. Prime Minister Edouard Philippe said that the situation was improving, but warned that the country was on the cusp of an economic crisis. Italy, meanwhile, reported its second lowest daily death toll in a month. The infection rate also fell to 1.7%. Let's now get in a sense of ground zero. For that, I'm joined in by our correspondent Lucy Huff, who's joining me live at this hour from Brussels. Lucy, a very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us on this newscast. Now, Lucy, let me begin by asking you about countries like the Czech Republic, which imposed strict measures early, but are now divided over lifting them despite low number of cases. So for many Western European nations now, the burning question remains how fast to loosen the restrictions. What are the major concerns plaguing policy makers at this moment?
Well, clearly, the major concern is that there would be a second wave of infections were the lockdown measures to be lifted too early or too quickly. But of course, there are also very, very real concerns about the economic damage and the ramifications that that could have also on the healthcare system. So there is a concern from lawmakers both to restart economies that have been crippled by this crisis, but also to prevent a second or even a third or a fourth wave of infections. So it's a delicate balance. And certainly from the EU's perspective, they are trying to centralise this, and they laid out a roadmap last week to try and ensure that, broadly speaking, EU member states approach releasing lockdown measures in a coordinated, gradual way that is evidence-based. But we're already seeing the challenges of that, with countries like the Czech Republic, as you say, taking steps to loosen their lockdowns. Similarly, Austria has allowed the reopening of some non-essential businesses. It's recommending that people wear face masks in supermarkets and on public transport. This week, Germany also is releasing some of the stricter lockdown measures, allowing the reopening of some non-essential businesses under 800 square metres, but again, urging people, mandating people to wear masks in public.
Right. Let's now look at the economic aspect. How does EU intend to restart economies, get businesses to open again, get people back to work, all this while limiting the risk of a possible second spike in coronavirus cases?
Well, so we have the announcement of a sort of three-part plan as part of a major coronavirus rescue package that was agreed by EU finance ministers on April the 9th, that coming after 16 and a half hours of a painful and difficult marathon talks. There are three aspects to this package. Number one is the extension of credit lines to countries like Italy and Spain, several billion in credit lines to help them restructure and rebuild their economies, to fund their healthcare systems. We also separately had 3.3 billion put through by the European Parliament last week, again for emergency funding for healthcare systems. We then have a jobs reinsurance programme for temporary unemployment. That's worth some 100 billion euros. That was a plan announced by the European Commission. The European Investment Bank is also boosting credit guarantees to make it easier for loaners to issue loans. So we have a three-point plan from the EU, but of course, economies like Italy and Spain are likely to be badly hit. They're calling for pooled debt rather than for, so that they don't have to take on the debt themselves, but that is something that's been met with opposition from more frugal countries in the north of the bloc.
Right. Now, Lucy, the exit strategy isn't just limited to the economic impact. The lockdown is also putting a strain on people's mental health. Domestic abuse cases are rising. Children's education is also affected. Denmark and Belgium, for example, are considering splitting classes to allow for better social distancing. Take us through measures focusing on these aspects of education and mental health, especially since you are currently in Brussels.
Yes, the rates of domestic violence here in Brussels have shot up, and there was in fact an interministerial conference on Friday to try and find a cross-party approach to deal with this issue. Certainly the priority as far as Belgium is concerned is to get children back to school as quickly as possible. The Belgian federal government will be announcing its plans for its exit strategy on Thursday. And yes, as you say, there are plans to potentially divide classrooms to reduce the strain on educators. But of course, there are concerns that some parents may be hesitant about bringing their children back to school. And they are urging teachers and head teachers to be realistic about how many children will be back at school, that some parents will keep their children in homeschooling out of fear of again, a second wave or a third wave of infections. But the priority as we come out into the phase 2 across the EU seems to be about getting children back to school as a priority. Certainly that's what we're hearing in Italy and Spain, that they want to start bringing children back to school as quickly as possible. But of course, there are concerns about how to do this and how quickly. We know that in Spain, children will be allowed out of their house from Monday next week, April the 27th. That's after they were quarantined for the last few weeks.
Absolutely. Now, with no clear path marked out, there remains a lot of uncertainty to follow, since this is the new normal, and how governments actually take to this new normal is something we'll have to wait and watch for now. Thank you so much, Lucy, for bringing us all those details and joining us on this live broadcast. Let's now shift attention